Welcome into another episode of the Respect Coin podcast presented by Wind Creek Casino, Chicago, Southland. Are you ready for your winning moment? Find it at Wind Creek Casino, Chicago, Southland, where the action never stops. Play the hottest table games, enjoy the newest slots, and celebrate big jackpots. At Wind Creek Casino, there's a win waiting for you around every corner. That feels kind of good. We do officially have a sponsor. It is Wind Creek Casino, Chicago, Southland. Looking forward to getting out there and mixing it up. Obviously, everyone loves a casino run. I can't wait. So really big appreciation and thanks to our friends over at Wind Creek Casino for sponsoring Respect Coin. They clearly respect coin. Love it. And we're in March. It is March. We are at March 6th, which means we're basically 1 week away from intense conference tournament games all over the country. You'll have the Big East, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12. We'll start to get auto bids the end of this week from some of the more mid-major conferences. Really, really excited. It's the best month of the year to bet, and the tourney will begin in 2 weeks from today. Yeah, 2 weeks from today. So with that in mind, we have a preview, not only who can win the tournament, but who you should be targeting if you're picking teams, betting futures, before you get to your brackets, before the brackets are even filled out. I'm going to give you a handful of teams that you need to look out for in March. So if you're not familiar, first thing, I use KenPom. KenPom is the best service, in my opinion, to kind of weed out who's good, who's bad, what their ratings are, what their strength of schedule was. So tap in on KenPom. It is a very, very useful resource if you're betting these days. To me, I've bet the tournament quite a bit, been to tournament games, been to Final Four, really fun time of the year. There is a certain criteria involved with who actually has a real legitimate chance to win the tournament. There's two things to look for. First, 96% of national champions since 2001 have had a top 21 KenPom rating on offense, and that's pre-tournament. So the top 21 teams offensively in the country on KenPom, 96% of those teams have been the national champions. On the other side, 91% of national champions since 2001 have had a top 31 defense. So top 21 offense, top 31 defense, that's the criteria if you're picking college basketball's elite and who actually can win the tournament. So before I tell you all the teams, I got some trends I want to share, especially as it pertains to more criteria on what you're looking for. So you got the top 21, you got the top 31. Head coaching experience is massive in the tournament. The guys that you always see, Tom Izzo, they basically named the month for him. Tom Izzo up there at the top, Bill Self, Kelvin Sampson, all of those guys that you're used to seeing every year, that goes a long way in the tournament. You want a guy who's got experience in obviously good situations, but bad situations. How many times have we watched games in the tournament where the mid-major or the 12 seed or the 13 seed is up 12, 14 points with 12 minutes left? Which coaches are going to get their players back adjusted and get them back in the games with a chance to win? So you're looking for a top 21 offense. You're looking for a top 31 defense. You're looking for a coach with good head coaching experience, someone who's been there before. The other thing you're looking for, great point guard play. Guard play wins in March. It is what it is. We've seen it a zillion times. You start to see guys, I remember Derrick Rose playing for Memphis, coached by Coach Cal. Those guys kind of take over. In that season, they were beat by Kansas, Mario Chalmers. The Fighting Illini, when they went, they had Darren Williams, they had D. Brown. It's very easy to see. It's a system that obviously works for a long time. So great guard play is important. Another three I'll touch on briefly. Top 10 in the ESPN BPI, that's their basketball index. That's important. It's not the end-all be-all, but something that you need to consider. Three-point shooting, huge, huge, huge in the tournament. May not be the reason why you win, There will be cold days. If you are making a long run, you're not going to shoot 40% from the field for every game in the tournament. If you do, you definitely have a very likely chance of winning or getting to the Final Four. So at least a 36% three-point shooting team, top 75 in the country in three-point percentage. Those are trends to look for if you're scouting out teams. And finally, they got to be battle-tested. Strength of schedule inside the top 33 is super important when you're talking about the grind that is playing 2 games a weekend for a month and getting to, playing the best competition in the country. So those factors are what you should be looking for as it pertains to teams you're picking to win and go deep in the national tournament. In terms of seeding, got some fun nuggets. 15 of the last 22 national champions since 2001 were 1 seeds. So the committee definitely gets it right. Not really a sense of, you can definitely overthink this. If you're picking chalk, it's usually probably pretty good idea to take the top teams because they're usually there at the end. 2 teams were number 2 seeds that won in that time span. Villanova in 2016, UConn in 2004. 3 teams were number 3 seeds. You got UConn, Florida, and Syracuse. And then the list goes on. So the top teams are usually going to win the championship. The lowest seed to win was the 7 seed. That was 2014 UConn. Obviously a team that got incredibly hot at the end of the year and rode their wave all the way through to a national championship. So the moral of the story here, don't overthink it too much. The committee is normally pretty much on the spot when it comes to this stuff. There will be Cinderellas, but those Cinderella runs normally end up losing. Either it's in the Elite 8, Sweet 16. Some get to the Final Four and then get absolutely drilled. We've seen it a number of times. So again, don't overthink it. The best teams in the country, those top 6 seeds, and even sometimes 7 seed, those are the teams that you need to target in the Final Four and with potential to win the national championship. Since the seeding began in 1979, 71 of the 88 teams to reach the title game have been top 3 seeds. So we haven't seen many national championship games with really low seeds, and if they do, they definitely have had trouble winning those games. So again, don't overthink it. It's been 11 seasons since the number 1 overall seed has won the title. So this is a little bit contrarian, right? Louisville in 2013, the block was clean. I'll just say that. They were the only team that was the number 1 overall seed to win the title. So the number 1 overall seed, it's a little tricky. Probably need to be playing really good basketball going in, not just because they won their conference tournament or things of that nature. I think this is a really interesting March. I've done a lot of research and watching over the last 3 weeks since football is over. There's a lot of good teams out there. I think there's more parity, and I think people say this all the time. So if I'm a broken record, my apologies. But there's going to be a lot of parity in this tournament. There always is. But the top teams are the top teams, and those are the ones that we should target. Fun nugget, do not pick a 5 seed. A 5 seed has never won a championship ever. They've never won a championship. So if you're on the 5 line, it's pretty much a kiss of death. Don't take any 5s unless you want to try and upset the apple cart. I don't think it's worth it. But like I said, there's a lot of reasons why those top teams will get it done. But if it were me, I'd probably leave the 5 seeds out. So let's get into some of these teams that I think can win. I'm not going to give you the top 7 first because I want to make you wait for it. But let's talk some sleepers. So sleepers to pick, sleepers not necessarily that can win the tournament, but if you're betting props, all the big boys, DraftKings, FanDuel, Fanatics, they will have props on how far these teams make it. So make sure you're taking a look after Selection Sunday. That stuff will start to come out. I know we have 2 weeks, but never too early to start taking a peek at some of these teams in terms of sleepers. At the top, West Coast teams, BYU and Gonzaga. 2 things these teams do really well. They're great offensively. BYU is a 3-point shooting powerhouse. They do have some experience. Gonzaga, coached by Mark Few, phenomenal coach, hasn't gotten over the hump and won that national championship, but seemingly always is a second weekend team. They feel like they're very close a bunch of times. They're a team that has experience. The coach has experience. They're not the best team in their conference right now. I think St. Mary's has taken that over. But the St. Mary's Gales, another team in this sleepers list, those West Coast teams definitely can show out. BYU, Gonzaga, St. Mary's, all really strong teams. And I'm going to throw another one in there. UC Irvine, you probably have never seen a game they've played. I've watched a little bit of them. We have them in a Calcutta, which I'll get to a little later. Really strong team, really well coached, great defensively. And you're probably not watching games at 10 p.m. every weeknight, so you don't know that much about them. They're a team to look out for to make a splash early in the tournament. Other sleepers, you may not consider it. George Mason has made a Final Four in the last 20 years. I can't remember what year, but a very strong program, playing really good basketball this season. And I'll round it out with two more major Power 5 conference schools. Vanderbilt, somehow, Harvard or the Midwest, that team is very, very sneaky good. They've played a really crazy schedule at the SEC. I think the SEC is probably the deepest conference in college basketball. They're a team to look out for. And finally, this is going to be a surprise that they're in the sleepers category. St. John's. Rick Pitino has done an unreal job this year with the St. John's Red Storm. This team can really make some noise. They're probably a little bit down from a national perspective. The Big East is kind of wide open, in my opinion. UConn isn't the same as what they have been in the past. Rick Pitino has been a part of the national tournament a lot, more than most, and he's going to have those guys ready. So those are the sleepers: BYU, Gonzaga, St. John's, Vanderbilt, UC Irvine, St. Mary's, and George Mason. Don't bet them to win it all. Probably not. They probably don't have what it takes to win the whole thing, but definitely a Sweet 16 appearance, potentially Final Four experience there as well. I'll move from the sleepers to Tier 1. Tier 1, these are the teams that are just below the criteria line that I believe have a very good chance of making some noise, getting to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, potentially Final Four, and could give one of these top tier teams a run for their money if they make it into a national championship. First, I will start with Michigan State. March equals Izzo. I'm a Michigan fan, so it's very annoying to admit, but the dude always makes the tournament and seemingly always makes a deep run. They're going to win the Big Ten outright. There will be the top seed in the Big Ten tournament next week in Indianapolis. They have a strong path to absolutely get a decent route to make it to another Final Four. Auburn, you might be asking yourself why Auburn isn't in the S tier, in the top tier of teams that we know can make the national championship. Has a lot to do with their defense, but they're well coached. They have a National Player of the Year candidate. And I think that they've been touted. They've been the number one seed or the number one ranked team in the country on many occasions this year. The SEC has been such a gauntlet that they will be battle tested. I worry about their three-point shooting a little bit. And if they end up getting in foul trouble, they're not extremely deep. So that's why I'm a little cautious on Auburn. But they are in that first tier of teams that can make that run. Moving on, Iowa State, another team that surprised, I believe, a lot of people this year. Well, I won't say a lot of people. They surprised me. I don't traditionally think of Iowa State as a basketball powerhouse, but they have had good teams, and I do think they're well coached. To round out this tier, Maryland just picked up a big win against Michigan on the road. They have a lot of tools and a very good coach. I think that they're a sneaky team that can make a deep run. Big Ten, probably just below the SEC, probably 1B with the Big 12. Really deep league, very good competition. So Maryland, to me, is another team that I think can make some noise in March. And then finally, last two teams that you do kind of associate with March success. Kansas, no matter what you want to say about them, Bill Self is a great coach. They do have a lot of experience. Hunter Dickinson is having another good year. I think his name's DeJuan Wagner. DeJuan Wagner. If it's not DeJuan Wagner, apologies. But they have a 6th-year point guard who's played the most games in Kansas history. That obviously with the guard play importance makes a ton of impact on how far that the Kansas Jayhawks can go. Finally, Shaka Smart. Shaka loves March. Marquette has one of the, I guess top 15, 20 draft prospects on their roster. Another team that I can see making a run. So we've gotten through quite a bit. Let's talk about one of these 7 teams. There are 7 teams that fit the KenPom criteria with a lot of very important factors that I mentioned all in line. One of these 7 teams will win the NCAA tournament. I can say it confidently based on some of these trends. And let's start with Duke. Duke has so much going for them this year. I know that they haven't had a ton of tournament success over the last decade, but you do have the National Player of the Year, in my opinion, in Cooper Flagg, number 1 overall pick loading in the next NBA draft. He's been a monster. They've been blowing teams out in the ACC. Granted, the ACC not as strong as it has been in years past. Duke is a team with John Shire, who's been through some of the battles, learned from one of the best ever in Coach K. They're a team that you can pretty much pencil in, I think, for at least the Elite 8. If they run into a buzzsaw and a matchup pops up, they could be tripped up. But Duke is one of the 7 teams that can win the national championship this year. Next on the list, the Florida Gators. Now, you might not traditionally think of Florida as a basketball school. The football success hasn't always been there in the last decade, but this team is a wagon. They're long, they're deep, they play a lot of guys, they're coached very well, and they played this SEC schedule, which has been a gauntlet. I do see them being a team that can make some serious noise with their backcourt. Their front court's very solid as well. They've got very versatile bigs. So I do see Florida as a contender to win the whole thing, to win the big dance. Houston, coached by Kelvin Sampson, another team that has just come up short the last handful of years. They've had great teams defensively, and that hasn't changed, so they're back. Kelvin Sampson is leading the charge again. LJ Cryer, absolute stud, another guy that can really take the reins and make this a deep run for Houston. Will they get over the hump? That remains to be seen. Like I said, they've been close. Could this be the year? They are on my list of teams that could win the national championship. Texas Tech, kind of a surprise. If you haven't watched JT Toppin, you have 1 week and some change in the conference tournament to watch. Texas Tech, really fun team to watch this season. Selfishly, have them in a Calcutta, so shameless plug. I hope they go very far, win the national championship, but they have what it takes in terms of this criteria, being a top 21 offense and a top 31 defense, to make some noise in March as well. A surprise team, another football school that's I think, exceeding expectations this season, is the Clemson Tigers. The only team to beat Duke this year in the ACC, I'm pretty sure of that. They won against Cooper Flagg, which puts them in position to win, obviously, the ACC outright. They could end up being the 1 seed in the conference tournament. That always bodes well. And when you have that blue chip win over a team like Duke with Cooper Flagg, that's going to carry you a little bit. Worry a little bit on the coaching side. I won't lie about that. The experience isn't great, but the team is older. So they've played in the tournament. They've got some guys coming back that have been there, and they fit the criteria. So Clemson, you probably can get some really good value on Clemson and teams like Texas Tech as well if you're betting outrights. Arizona, another very traditional, great basketball program. A lot of really good players on this team. A lot of really good synergy. I think they're coached really well. A team like that in Arizona who has the banners on the wall, the pedigree, that's always a team that I have confidence in if I'm betting teams to go to the Sweet 16, to the Elite 8, to make the Final Four. They've been good on both sides of the ball. And finally, the Tennessee Volunteers, another team, more football pride than basketball, but a tremendous basketball program. Again, returning guys. Last year's team was really good. One of the top-seeded teams in the tournament. They lost Dalton Connect to the NBA, but they still have a lot of DNA on that team that I think can take them and put them in the conversation for a national championship. So as I recap, one of these 7 teams will win the national championship. Duke, Florida, Houston, Texas Tech, Clemson, Arizona, or Tennessee. Those are the 7 teams that fit the KenPom criteria. They're predominantly well coached, strength of schedule, they've been tested, they shoot well from three. For the most part, all of them do pretty decently. And finally, you're going to roll the balls out in March, and there's going to be chaos, there's going to be upsets. This is not set in stone by any means, but the trends and the numbers specifically when it comes to the NCAA tournament do not tend to lie very often. So I am very confident that one of those 7 teams will be cutting down the nets this year after the Final Four. So keep it locked with us. We will have Respect Coin previews of March. Next week, I'll get to chat with my friend Nate Jacobson. We're going to talk all things conference tournaments. We're going to give out some outrights for the conference tournaments before we get to Selection Sunday. And we will have a full bracket preview on the Monday after Selection Sunday. Cannot wait for these games to get started. It's the best time of year to bet, and it's absolutely a time where you should use the numbers to your advantage, use the data, because if you want to win some money, you got to respect coin. And how to respect coin is don't ignore the signs. The signs are everywhere. It's tried and true. This is one of the more ridiculously chaotic betting situations of the sports calendar, but it's an absolute blast. So don't take it too seriously. Let's throw out some bets. Let's have some fun. And hopefully we get one of those 7 teams across that finish line in April to cap off what should be a really fun and exciting March. So that's what we got. I'm, as always, your host, Mike Bolling, and this has been Respect Coin, presented by Wind Creek Casino, Chicago Southland. Peace, y'all.